Africa, a land ruled by predators, majestic lions, stealthy leopards, relentless hyenas. But pause for a second. Look closely and you'll notice something missing. Where are the bears? Imagine introducing a bear specially built to thrive in Africa today, a powerful omnivore, perfectly adapted to live alongside lions and hyenas without throwing nature out of balance. What would this bear look like? Africa did have bears in the past, and knowing their history sets the stage for our modern design. The Atlas bear, Ursus arctos crowtheri, was the last bear standing in Africa in historical times. It roamed the forests and mountains of North Africa, from Morocco to Libya, until the late 19th century when it was wiped out by overhunting. This brown-black bear was actually a relative of the Eurasian brown bear, about the same size as its European cousins. Unfortunately, centuries of being hunted for sport and even dragged into Roman arenas sealed its fate. The last Atlas bear is thought to have been killed around 1870, ending the legacy of modern bears on the continent. Long before the Atlas bear, however, Africa hosted an even more impressive Ursine titan. Enter Agriotherium africanum, a prehistoric bear that lived millions of years ago. Fossils tell us this beast measured up to 2 meters in length and may have weighed as much as 750 kilograms, putting it among the largest carnivorous mammals of its time. It had wide, powerful jaws, capable of an enormous bite force, one of the strongest bite forces ever inferred for any bear. How did a slow, bulky bear survive among Africa's Miocene megapredators? By being smart and opportunistic. Paleontologists believe Agriotherium specialized in a mix of grazing on grasses, gobbling fruits, and intimidating other predators to scare them off their kills. Living alongside saber-toothed cats, it had to hold its ground, but around 2.5 million years ago, it vanished, leaving Africa without a bear for ages to come. Understanding these two bears, the Atlas bear and Agriotherium, gives us clues about what works and what doesn't for a bear in Africa. So what would our hypothetical African bear look like? To thrive in the diverse and sometimes harsh African environments, it needs the right gear and build. First off, size. We'd give it a robust frame, but not outright colossal. Think of a bear somewhat akin to a large Eurasian brown bear or an American grizzly. That means when standing on all fours, it might be a bit over a meter at the shoulder, and when it stands up on hind legs, easily 1.8 to 2 meters tall. In weight, we're talking in the range of 300 to 400 kilos for a big male, roughly 660 to 880 pounds. This size makes it heavyweight enough that a lion pride would hesitate to mess with it, yet not so huge that it can't find enough food to eat. A thick, powerful neck and shoulder hump would give it the strength to dig and to wrestle carcasses from other carnivores. Its paws would be armed with long, curved claws, not only handy for digging up roots and tearing open termite mounds, but also formidably effective as weapons. One swipe from a bear's paw can break a skull or snap a spine. Our African bear's clawed forepaw would be the equal of any lion's bite in lethality. And those legendary jaws. We'd borrow a page from Agriotherium's playbook and equip this bear with a strong, broad muzzle and powerful bite. It wouldn't quite have the extremely short snout of its prehistoric cousin, but it would be built to crush. With its teeth and jaw muscles, it could crack open bones for marrow the way hyenas do, and crunch tough nuts or fibrous plants when needed. A true generalist's dentition. Crucially, our African bear would need to handle heat in ways its polar and grizzly cousins don't. Imagine it with a shorter, thinner coat of fur, a sleek but rough hide, perhaps a dusty brown or reddish brown that blends into savanna grass and desert rocks. A lighter coloration, like the sandy tone of bears from the Middle East, would reflect intense sun better than jet black fur. We might even give it slightly larger ears than a typical brown bear to help radiate heat. Many African mammals, from elephants to fennec foxes, use ear size as a cooling mechanism. When midday temperatures soar, this bear shouldn't overheat easily. Its feet might be tough and partially hairless on the soles, adapting to hot ground. And while it's a heavyweight, it would have a relatively leaner build in summer months. Not carrying an overabundance of fat, except when it needs to survive a drought or a lean season. In essence, picture a grizzly bear that spent some time hitting the gym and then vacationing in the Sahel. Muscular, toned, with a sun-bleached coat and a resilience to high temperatures. Despite its bulk, agility would be part of its package. Our bear could run in short bursts up to around 40 to 50 kilometers per hour when it needs to charge or chase. Not as fast as a cheetah or even a lion, but quick enough that most prey or rivals wouldn't want to be caught. Climbing ability might be moderate, perhaps like a young brown bear. It could scramble up a sturdy tree if absolutely necessary, which could be useful for raiding honey from bees' nests or escaping a marauding elephant. And let's not forget one of the bear's greatest assets, its nose. The perfect African bear would have an olfactory sense on par with the best of its kind. In real life, bears are famous super sniffers. A black bear's sense of smell is about 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's. That means our bear can detect carcasses or ripe fruit from miles away, literally sniffing out opportunities on the wind. Large nasal cavities and a moisture-rich snout would help it pick up the faintest sense of water or food in the dry air. This hypersensitive nose, combined with keen hearing, would often alert the bear to chances and dangers long before its small eyes ever see them. Where would our African bear actually live? Africa is a big place with a mosaic of habitats, from lush rainforests to arid deserts, high mountains to savannas. To give our bear the best chance of long-term survival, we'd likely place it in a habitat that offers both abundant food and cover from the elements. One promising setting is the savanna woodlands or savanna grassland mosaic. Think of regions like East Africa or Southern Africa, where open grasslands are interspersed with patches of acacia trees, riverine forests, and rocky outcrops. Here, the bear would have space to roam and plenty to eat, but also access to shade and hiding spots. Areas near waterholes or rivers would be especially attractive, not only for drinking and cooling off, but because those are wildlife hubs where the bear can find carcasses and lush vegetation in the dry season. Could it survive in the desert or semi-desert? Possibly at the fringes. Our bear might patrol the edges of the Sahara or Namib if it has adaptations like the ability to go without water for a while and eat desert plants. But the lack of cover and scarcity of food make true deserts tough even for native species, so our bear would prefer better environs. What about tropical rainforests or jungles? Bears like sun bears and Asian black bears do fine in forests, but Africa's equatorial forests, like the Congo, already have heavy competition, and a bear might struggle with humidity and dense undergrowth given its size. High mountains and forests, like the Ethiopian highlands or Atlas Mountains, could be a refuge. Cooler temperatures and fewer large competitors, but also less abundant prey. Surviving the African heat means our bear would adjust its daily rhythm. Likely it becomes crepuscular and nocturnal when needed. At night, a different Africa awakens, and our bear would be in its element. Under the cover of darkness, it can trot long distances, invisible except when caught in a moonbeam. Its sensitive nose and ears guide it to food. What does the perfect African bear eat? In one word, everything. A diet with variety ensures that even if one food source dwindles, the bear can switch to another. A crucial trait for long-term survival without wrecking the prey balance. In the wet season, our bear becomes a giant gardener, feasting on figs, acacia pods, berries, and nuts. It stands on hind legs to grab fruit or digs up roots and tubers like a warthog. Using its claws, it tears into termite mounds and logs for protein-rich insects, much like a sloth bear slurping up ants. And of course, honey. This bear would love honey if it can get it. In Africa, there's a symbiotic relationship between the honey-guide bird and humans, or honey badgers. The bird leads humans to beehives to get at the wax after the honey is taken. One can imagine our bear following an excited chattering honey guide to a bee's nest in a hollow tree. A few swipes, a bit of smoke, and it's faced first in a dripping honeycomb, ignoring bee stings thanks to thick fur. Now, all those vegetarian options are great, but our bear is also a meat eater when it can be. However, it's not the savanna's next superpredator in the way a lion or leopard is. Chasing fleet-footed antelope through open grassland in broad daylight isn't really a bear's style. That would burn too many calories and invite injury. Instead, this bear would often choose the path of least resistance for protein: scavenging. Why hunt when you can let someone else do the hunting for you? If a pride of lions takes down a zebra or a cheetah fells a gazelle, the bear just needs to sniff it out and show up at the dinner table. Its towering presence and ferocious reputation might be enough to send smaller predators packing. Lions would probably hate this. First hyenas steal their food, now a bear shows up. Seriously? Indeed, our bear's diet might mirror that of a hyena or a jackal in many ways, with the added advantage that it can also subsist on plants. If a severe drought causes prey numbers to crash and carnivores to starve, the bear can stay alive on berries, roots, or insects until prey rebounds. Does it ever hunt live prey? Yes, when the opportunity arises. Our bear might not be a stealth specialist, but it's still a powerful carnivore. If it catches a vulnerable animal off guard, it will seize the chance. Perhaps it surprises an impala fawn hiding in the brush, or ambushes a warthog that's too slow dashing into its burrow. It could even charge into a flock of flamingos by a lake, grabbing a few in the commotion. Fish could be on the menu too. Picture it sitting by a riverside, scooping catfish or tilapia out of the shallows with a quick swipe. In some areas, crocodiles might learn to fear a bear's approach, as it could scavenge croc kills, or even dare to snatch a smaller croc if feeling bold. Risky, but bears can be daring when hungry. Now that we've conjured this awesome African bear into existence, at least in our minds, let's hear from you. What would you name this bear? The Savannah Grizzly, or perhaps something local and epic sounding? Be creative. This is a one-of-a-kind species after all, deserving of a memorable name that pays homage to its African home and bear lineage. And what do you think of its characteristics? Did we get it right? Or would you design it differently? You've probably heard the joke about the drop bear, that fictional carnivorous koala haunting the bush, waiting to land on unsuspecting tourists. But the real story is that Australia has never had a true bear. Koalas get called koala bears all the time. Still, they're marsupials, not remotely related to the grizzlies or black bears of the northern hemisphere. So what's the deal? How come the land of kangaroos, wallabies, and wombats never ended up with a bear of its own? And more importantly, what if it did? First, a bit of history. Australia's wildlife evolved on a nearly isolated continent for tens of millions of years, long after dinosaurs vanished. Mammals flooded out elsewhere, but Australia was essentially sealed off, so it was colonized mainly by marsupials and a few monotremes like echidnas. By about 25 million years ago, all the major Aussie marsupial lineages, the ancestors of koalas, wombats, kangaroos, bandicoots, and more, were already present here. In other words, ecological niches everywhere were already filled, leaving no open slot for a placental mammal like a bear to just wander in and set up shop. In fact, no land bridges connected Australia to Eurasia, where true bears live, so none ever arrived naturally. When humans and their animals finally came thousands of years ago, the only big placental predators we got were dingoes, arrived about 3,500 years ago. But by then, the evolutionary opportunity had long passed. Every big predator Australia had was a marsupial or reptile, not a placental mammal. So if we're imagining the perfect bear for Australia, we have to start from scratch. What kind of bear-like creature could plausibly evolve in that unique environment? Let's build it piece by piece, borrowing features from real Australian animals and bears around the world. First, body size and shape. This bear wouldn't be as bulky as a polar bear, but bigger than a koala or wombat. Somewhere around 2 to 2.5 meters long from head to tail, and standing up to 1.5 meters tall when rearing on its hind legs, roughly in the same size range as an American black bear or a smaller brown bear. It would likely weigh between 80 and 120 kilograms, heavy enough to handle mid-sized prey, but still light and agile enough to cope with Australia's hotter, drier landscapes. The build would be short-legged and muscular, with powerful shoulders and a thick neck, essentially a wombat's dense frame taken to the next level. For reference, modern wombats reach about 1 meter in length and up to 35 kilos, and this bear would push those proportions into apex predator territory. The body would be short, stout, and muscular, a build that wouldn't look out of place next to a wombat, just scaled way up. Wombats are already dense little tanks of muscle, so it makes sense that an Australian bear would evolve along similar lines but much larger, maybe twice the size. That kind of structure offers serious power, perfect for flipping logs, digging into termite mounds, or wrestling prey. With that build, it would almost certainly walk plantigrade, flat-footed like true bears, giving it better balance and stability when climbing or standing upright. On its head, maybe a broad skull with a short muzzle. Not a pointed snout like a fox, but more bear-like, enough room for strong jaw muscles. Its ears could be a medium size, possibly larger than the tiny ears of a wombat for better hearing in dense brush, but smaller than a koala's big ears, since koalas don't move around much. Maybe something like a Tasmanian devil's ears, noticeable for feeling vibrations, especially at night. The eyes would be forward-facing for predator vision, like a bear or big cat, not like a horse. It might have a keen sense of smell, crucial for detecting prey underground or hidden in brush. The fur would shift, depending on where it lives. In cooler, wetter regions like Tasmania's eucalyptus forests or the Victorian Alps, it would likely grow a thick, insulating coat, something chestnut brown or dark grey to blend into the shadowy undergrowth. In hotter, drier places, like the outback or the tropical north, the coat would need to be shorter and lighter, helping it stay cool. More of a sandy tan or reddish brown, blending with dry soil and sun-bleached bark. Over time, regional variations could start to show up. A Tasmanian type might end up with long, shaggy fur and even a pale throat patch, while northern populations stick with a sleeker, more heat-adapted coat. Claws would be a prominent feature. Australian ground-digging mammals often have big claws. Wombats have blunt digging claws, koalas have sharp ones, and echidnas have giant digging foreclaws. A bear analogue down here would definitely have big curved claws, retractable or not, either way, formidable. Maybe they wouldn't retract fully like a cat's, since most bears' claws are semi-retractable at best. These claws could be used for tearing open termite nests or for climbing trees to raid honeycombs and fruit. What about its tail? Very short, I suspect, like a koala or bear. Nothing dinky like a kangaroo's. More like a small stub just to keep balance or to swat insects. Nothing especially flashy. Now let's consider diet and hunting style. Is it a pure carnivore or more of an omnivore? Given Australia's ecology, I think a true omnivore or opportunist makes more sense, much like most real bears except polar bears. It would likely eat a mix of meat and plant material. For protein, it could take down small to medium-sized animals, maybe wallabies, wombats, even young kangaroos or pademelons. It might lie in ambush near waterholes or dense bush, then rush out to grab prey with its strong forelimbs. Unlike the fleet-footed Tasmanian tiger, our bear would rely on brute strength and stealth rather than speed. It would definitely scavenge too, feasting on carcasses like dingoes and devils do. Bones and tough hides wouldn't faze its jaws. Bears have bone-crushing molars. Its teeth might be interesting, maybe a mix of adaptations. Thylacoleo had saber-like incisors, but our bear, wanting to crunch everything from meat to nuts, might have a more generalized bite. Big canines for seizing, flat molars for grinding seeds or vegetation, like a black or brown bear. In short, it could be reminiscent of a Tasmanian devil on steroids, with a bit of pouched bear DNA. On the plant side of its diet, Australia offers plenty to forage. This bear could climb low eucalyptus branches or stand upright to reach wattle seed pods, berries, or even break into termite mounds for a high-protein snack. Not too far off from anteater behavior. Without the specialized gut flora of a koala, it wouldn't be digesting eucalyptus leaves, but it could still handle tougher plant matter over time. Stripping bark to get at the sweet inner layers, digging up fibrous roots in the dry season, crunching seeds, all fair game. And like most bears, it wouldn't say no to honey. Native stingless bees, wild hives tucked into tree hollows, maybe even sticky potaroo honey blobs. This thing would tear into logs and climb for combs with all the single-minded focus of a sugar-craving bear. In terms of behavior and social life, I imagine it is largely solitary, again like most bears. Each adult probably keeps its own territory, marked by scent and scratch marks. What about activity patterns? With Australia's intense heat, this bear would likely be most active at dawn and dusk, maybe even fully nocturnal during the hotter months. Cooler weather might bring it out more during the day, especially in southern regions. During the peak heat, it would rest somewhere shaded and insulated, maybe curled up inside a hollow log, tucked into a deep burrow like a wombat, or sheltered beneath a rocky overhang. Curled on a bed of leaves, nose twitching for scents in the breeze, it waits out the heat until the light fades and the bush starts moving again. That's when the hunt begins. Wallabies, roots, insects, whatever's on the menu. If it remembers ancestors, maybe it could do something like torpor in really cold climates. Tasmania and the high mountains can get chilly. It might grow a heavier winter coat and slow down, but full hibernation like a grizzly seems unlikely. Perhaps a sleepy state during food-scarce times, but otherwise expert and fairly adaptable. Maybe lazy cat burglar or patient stalker at night. Where exactly would you find this bear? Let's look at real Australian landscapes. One obvious home is the tall eucalyptus forests of eastern Australia. Think Blue Mountains, southern Queensland, Victoria, and Tasmania. In these wet or temperate forests, our bear could climb gum trees for fruit or descend to the forest floor. The ferns and underbrush would provide cover for an ambush. The climate here has cool winters, so a thick fur coat would keep you cozy. These forests teem with possums, pandamelons, cockatoos, all possible prey or companions in the ecosystem. Up north, the floodplains and woodlands of Kakadu-like country would be another possibility. In the wet season, it might fish for barramundi or eels. In the dry season, it could hunt wallabies or buffalo calves, drinking from shallow pools. Saltwater crocodiles also live there, so our bear would have to be careful. It might even raid croc eggs or young crocs in quieter backwaters. In more arid zones, like Central Australia's Spinifex Plains or scrub, the bear would be less common but still present, especially if it can dig for burrowing prey. It could frequent rocky gorges or riverine strips where there's shelter and higher prey density. How would this bear fit with other Aussie wildlife? Well, the dingo would be an interesting character. With dingoes around since 3,500 years ago, our bear would have to share the hunting grounds with them. In practice, they might avoid direct conflict. Perhaps the bear hunts by day, like wombats or echidnas, while dingoes hunt by dawn or dusk, or vice versa. If they ever met, it'd likely be a tense standoff. Dingoes in packs versus a big solitary bear. I'd bet the bear, if large, would win one-on-one easily, but the dog pack might dissuade it from meddling too much. Also, smaller predators like Tasmanian devils, quolls, and eagles might end up scavenging after the bear's kills. A mob of wallaroos or a group of emus might take extra care around areas known to harbour our bear. Koalas would keep even higher up in the canopy. What about the rest of the ecosystem? A large omnivore like this would become a keystone species. It could keep herbivore populations in check, say by preying on sick kangaroos or feral pigs, and that would help vegetation. Its digging and foraging would turn over soil and spread seeds. For instance, if it eats bush apples or berry shrubs, its droppings could disperse those seeds far afield. It might even help aerate termite mounds while raiding them, which could benefit certain plants. Tourists and researchers would be fascinated. Of course, farmers might not love it eating a calf now and then, but like dingoes, the bear might mostly stick to wild prey unless driven scarce. Finally, after all this dreaming, how do we wrap up? Well, the whole point of this creature is to get us thinking creatively and scientifically at once. In a way, we've sketched Australia's perfect bear, a muscular marsupial-like omnivore with wombat roots, devilish claws, and bearish habitats. Something that could believably fit into Aussie prehistory or an alternate ecosystem. Now I want your input. What would you call this bear? Drop bear is already taken, but maybe Aussie Bruin, bush bear or something. Whatever name you like, drop it in the comments or send it along. I'd love to hear your ideas. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.